So Hillary asked about exhaustion, and I'm going to talk about this from my perspective. So take it all with a grain of salt. But essentially, in my life, exhaustion starts with a monumental push of my will. That's the key there, my will. I identify something in the world that I want. And I haven't been in exhaustion since 2020, really, 2020, maybe just after, when I had my real legit awakening, like when I really realized that the universe has my back. That doesn't mean I haven't struggled, but I haven't been exhausted because I now realize that it's not my will. Like I learned the lesson from exhaustion, which is one of the things I'm going to talk about here. So the question that you've got to ask yourself, the question that I needed to ask myself before you engage in anything is, what is the seed? Is the seed love or is the seed fear? Am I doing this to prove something, or am I doing this because it is coming from a service impulse out of my heart? Am I doing this because I don't feel safe? Am I doing this? There are so many reasons. And our mind is really good at justifying them and turning them into something that we would see as more pure and more true, so that we go and do it. So you got to get really, really clear and really, really honest with yourself through this process. Ultimately, it all stems from control. It stems from me thinking that I am the one steering my life. Also, there's a belief that if I don't do it, or if I don't kill myself, if I don't work really hard, that who else is going to do it? And that comes from my upbringing. Like, my mom was not very present. My dad wasn't there at all, and my mom was not very present. And so, if not me, then who, right? Like, I got to do all this stuff. And so if things start to fall through the cracks, well, I'm the one that's got to shoulder that responsibility. But the reality is, we don't have to shoulder that responsibility. It can just fall through the cracks. And that's your work. And that's a big part of exhaustion as well. A really clear indicator that I'm approaching a state of exhaustion is when the thought in my mind is, I will be out of this right after the next thing. Right after I do this, I'll be able to relax. Right after I get through this last push, and then inevitably there's another push. So as soon as I have that thought of like, okay, as soon as I'm on the other side of this, I'm going to be able to chill out, that's an indicator that we are on the path to exhaustion, and it's only a matter of time before we get there. So that's like an early warning sign. The good news is, of this process, like everything, right? The exhaustion is the 40th shadow, and every shadow contains a gift. So here's what I identified as the process and therefore the gift of exhaustion. So physical exhaustion leads to spiritual pursuit. In other words, when my body just cannot bear the burden anymore, when I literally cannot take another step, when it just becomes too heavy and I'm broken and shattered, in that moment, that's when I turn to God. That's the only way I would have turned to God. Then, from there, there's another exhaustion that needs to come. At least there was for me. Because from that moment on, my life, just that energy just kind of redirected itself into the spiritual domain. Then I was just all day, every day, dealing with my shadow, trying to understand what was going on, trying to connect to the higher frequencies, reading wisdom texts, like all of that stuff. And it's driven by the hunger that I have in my heart. You know, that's the shadow of my SQ. I have this deep, insatiable hunger, but all of us have this. And so the seeking also leads us to exhaustion. We come to this point where we just throw our hands up and We can't do it anymore. We can't keep trying to figure it out. We realize that we're never going to get an answer to the question, and we just start living the question. And in that moment, everything changes. In that moment, spiritual exhaustion leads to the gifts and to the cities, because in that moment is when you become present, when you stop trying to figure it out and just living your mundane, regular life. Exhaustion, I think, is here to lead us to these epiphany moments, to lead us to the edge of being shattered over and over again. To use the Matrix, it leads us to these red pill, blue pill moments. And you got to choose. Do you want to step into the void, step into the unknown, face the fear, or go back to the life that keeps you miserable, but you know what's going to happen? That's ultimately the choice. And most people choose to know instead of choosing to step into the unknown. Because there might be snakes down there. Dragons, as they say. So the problem with exhaustion, as I see it, is actually a cultural or societal problem that glorifies the exhaustion in the first place. And because the exhaustion gets glorified, we don't learn the lesson, right? It takes us to the precipice and we choose to go back in, because our society actually sees exhaustion like a badge of honor. Look how hard I'm working. Somebody asks how you're doing. Busy. I'm busy. Like it's a good thing. Like we want to be busy. Look how hard I'm working. It's like this virtue signaling thing that we do, which is very weird. And it stops you from being able to actually learn the lesson from exhaustion, because you want to dive back into it because people are clapping for you saying, good job, you're working so hard, you're killing yourself, you're gonna be there someday. So because of that, we double down on the achieving and miss the point entirely. And the point of exhaustion, at least the first one, is that we are living a spiritually barren life. That your soul is starving for something on a deep level. And until it gets that, it's going to continue to drop you into this intense, deep suffering. And the deeper suffering, or the more suffering that you will feel, or you will feel more suffering, the further you get from your soul's path, the further you get from your dharma. Until there is a really sad thing that happens, is the suffering sometimes will lead to collapse. It will just lead to giving up. And people just live the rest of their lives in that state, thinking that they can never have what they want, can never be what they want to be. And that just hurts my heart so deeply. And trust me, I've thought about it many, many, many times. And yeah, I've been there. So if you're there, I totally understand. The thing is that there is a misbelief with exhaustion that's all that's lacking is your willpower. That if you just tried harder, you would get what you want. But that's not how it works. You get what you want when you align to your dharma, not when you work harder, not when you exhaust yourself. It's like this bastardization of like pick yourself up by the bootstraps. When you're on dharma, you still are doing hard work, but it brings you energy. You don't get exhausted. You get enlivened. You get empowered. And exhaustion is addictive. We tend to want to get lost in the hard work, right? We want to see ourselves get that fancy car or the end that we've been chasing for so long. And the work can feel good because it's distracting us from a really deep pain. And in that way, it can be really addicting. When you slow down, we feel that core wound on a deep level. It's this addiction to subjugating soul so that we can tend to what other people tells us is important in the world. It's basically living somebody else's life, and it's an addiction to that because they're going to give you a sense of approval. They're going to say you're doing such a good job, and there's a part of you that wants that, even though it's killing you. And because of that addiction, it ensures that your frequency is going to stay low, down in the dumps. And it guarantees that you're going to stay stuck in that same cycle over and over and over again. And when you are in that place, you are blind to the damage that you are doing in every other area of your life. So when I was in active addiction, one of the treatment centers that I was engaged with, which didn't work. There's many of those. But one of the takeaways that I had from that was you have a choice right now. You can give up everything in your life for this one thing, which was heroin, or you can give up this one thing and get your entire life back. That's ultimately what the question is. Are you willing to give up that one thing that you think you need more than anything else in the world so that you can have your relationships back, so that you can feel spiritual abundance, so that eventually you will have material prosperity too? It'll just be the last thing to catch up. That's why this transition is difficult, because it starts inside, and you got to step and leap into a void where the outside isn't gonna. You're going to be doing the hard work and it's not going to show up. Not for some time. And knowing that can be helpful. It's not bad news. What starts to happen with the addiction to exhaustion is that we start to lose our humanity. And because we start to lose our humanity, people withdraw from us. They don't want to be around somebody that's like that. Like when I had my gym, I had this a big, nice office that was outside of the main gym floor. And people would knock on it all the time and want to talk to me. And when I was really going through it, one part of me wanted to talk to them. But then there was another part of me that just felt bothered. That was like, I'm trying to do this other work. I'm trying to get this thing done in the world that I want. And I would feign engaging with this person. And again, a part of me wanted to, but it came across that I didn't want to be talking to them. And slowly, less and less people came to the door. And slowly, more and more people started to withdraw from me and therefore from the business. Because I was trying to enact my will. And so that leaves you lonely. It leaves you cut off. It's really, exhaustion is really you pulling yourself out of universal flow, pulling yourself out of unity with Gaia. Isolating like that is incredibly damaging to your nervous system. It's incredibly damaging to cut yourself off, to freeze yourself out. And that's exactly what you're doing. We are one organism in Gaia. And when you try and march to the beat of your own drum, I mean, that's what cancer cells do. They try and do their own thing. They want more. They're constantly replicating, making more. So that's how this culminates, ultimately. Exhaustion culminates in physical illness. Might be cancer, might be something else. But that's where you're headed. There will be a physical manifestation of this. I promise you. I have zero doubt. So that's my take on exhaustion. It's important. It's a pivotal moment. So if you're on the edge of that, pay attention. If you're coming out of it, remember who you are. Remember what you are. Take a real good look at it and learn the lesson. All right, y'all. We got a wisdom call on Thursday. I'm recording this on Tuesday, so I'm not sure if I'll get it up today. I probably will. But I'll see you in a couple days. Peace.